And congratulations, Amy.
Thank you.
On the publication of your book. I was so happy to get a copy of it. It's even longer than your senior thesis.
Yeah, that wasn't hard. The thesis was hard. This was just collecting funny women, much easier than my thesis.
So can you tell us what inspired you to put this book together?
Yes. So I grew up obsessed with Gilda Radner. I'm still obsessed with Gilda Radner, but I fell in love probably in middle school, and I basically went crazy on eBay just trying to find anything and everything she'd ever done. I think my parents let me go crazy on eBay because they were like, she's not drinking or doing drugs. She can buy weird 70s comedy ephemera. And so there's this book, and it's basically a big collection of humor by so many of my favorite women in comedy of all time. So Gilda and Lorraine Newman and Phyllis Diller and Candice Bergen. And it has comics and essays and fiction and anything and everything. And it was always absurd to me that there wasn't another collection of humor by women after that. And by all accounts, the amount of women in comedy has like exploded since 1976. So I had always wanted to do one, and that's what I did for Notes from the Bathroom line. So I got 150 of my favorite women in comedy to write, draw, create, whatever they wanted. The testament to how many funny women there are on this planet is that 150 is like, I'm missing so many. I do believe like the women that ended up in this, it's like those are the women who are meant to be in it. It's just like a group of lovely, lovely, brilliant human beings. And it's like an honor to get to lightly edit their work. Mostly it was like well, we could lose this word. It's not, they all are brilliant. Yeah.
So let's bring in your friends so that they can join our conversation.
Okay, cool. I think they're coming. Here they are.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I got in.
Welcome.
Hi.
So Amy has just told us about Gilda Radner as her inspiration for going into comedy. I'm curious to know if any of you had a comparable person, either in your childhood or your early career, that really inspired you to think about comedy as a career.
I feel like once I started stand-up, I started like absorbing as much as I could. And I think just any women who were doing something kind of outside the box, like Maria Bamford or Kristen Schaal, or even like, a peer like Kate Berlant or something, where they're doing something just so themselves and unique. Those are sort of the acts that really drew me.
Yeah, great. How do you know when you're working on your routines? How do you know when something is going to work and is going to be funny? Do you Aparna just said maybe I need an audience to really know that. But do you have a sense when you write a line, you go, oh, that's good. That one's good.
Yeah, I do. Like if I tickle myself, if it makes me laugh, then it has a pretty good chance of making someone else laugh, I think. And it's also like, if you like it, you'll deliver it well. You know what I mean? Like if it's a line you believe in, kind of. So I feel like that's certainly been something that I've been thinking about in the last year, where there have been no audiences.
I took a class at Princeton with John McPhee, who's one of my favorite writers. And he was always like, if you can write a reference or a joke or something into a piece and it's only going to connect with 3 people, it's worth it for those 3 people. Like it's even if millions will read it and it connects with 3. So I think when you if something really tickles yourself, there's going to be those 3 weirdos too that it's worth it for.
A question that I would love to hear you thinking about. There was a trope for many, many years that women just simply weren't as funny as men. Now, there was no woman who thought that, but there were a lot of people who thought that. Did that ever threaten you? Did you ever encounter it? Or by the time you really began to become professionals, that trope had died a good death?
No, still alive and kicking.
It is?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it is. I not necessarily, and I don't necessarily perform with this idea that they don't think I'm as funny, but I do think there's still a lot of preconceived notions about what a female comedian will and can talk about. I find they expect you to say a certain thing. And so it's, I was always very mindful of that, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
seem to be more rules with female stand-ups about like how you're supposed to be, or like even what you're not supposed to do, because it's like, oh well, these comics in the 80s did this, so you better not do that. And it's like it feels a little more rigid sometimes for women, even if it's like not overtly said.
I can't imagine how you guys do. Stand up for women seems like the worst.
I also think a lot of it, I don't know if you guys get this way, but I just feel like I'm constantly thinking about like what is what I'm saying, how is that reflecting on women in comedy? You know what I mean? Like I don't think men have to think about like if I say this, what will people think about men? Like with this book, I was like, I have to make sure it's women being funny about everything in the world. So they're not like women can only be funny about dating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like there's always like, how am I making a statement? And it's like, can't I just say what I want to say without having to think about that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about in television? You know, broadly writ. Is it still harder for women to really sort of take control and have agency over the kinds of projects you can do?
I think it's gotten, a lot better. I mean, it's still like so disheartening when you watch a show and then I think we all watch the credits pretty carefully and like see who's in there and how many women were in the writer's room. And sometimes you're like, oh, baby, poor showing. But like when you think about all the amazing stuff, it's like Fleabag and I May Destroy You and like all of the stuff that's just been like so iconic in the past few years. It's just like, it's all women, you know?
Right.
So,
And there's so many things to be disappointed by in the television industry.
Yeah.
Being a woman is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of fights to fight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Over things you think you shouldn't have to.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, my version of this in science was that if there is I'm going to use scientific terms, if there's a spectrum of personality that is allowed for men.
Oh, spectrum like the cable provider.
Yes, TV, exactly.
Oh dear. Bell curve. That women are just allowed a much narrower range. You know, you can't be too shy, you can't be too aggressive. There's sort of a middle ground where you're allowed to function. And if you stray into the tails of those curves, then you're in trouble. So it's you learn the rules of the road as you age. So let's see. Gaia Lawton is asking, what is it like to be a woman in comedy? What advice do you wish you were given before you entered the industry?
When a friend or someone in your orbit gets a cool gig, that's only good for you.
It feels like there's not room sometimes. And it's
Yeah.
well, we're making room. But your voice is what is making room.
Totally.
So here's a question from Emily Whitaker, who I think is a friend of Amy's.
Yeah.
And she's asking, what is some art form outside of comedy that inspires you?
I think all comedians want to be musicians. And all musicians want to be comedians, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Emily's an amazing composer and conductor, so that's a good answer. I think great dancers are unbelievable.
I'm so jealous of dancers.
I know.
Me too.
I think I'm doing anything, and then it's like the minute you catch a glimpse, you're like, oh, that's not what I thought I looked like.
You cover all the mirrors like as soon as you start.
Yeah.
What is the biggest setback you faced and how did you overcome it? What did you learn from it?
Nothing that I would say like this is the thing in comedy that did it. That's not a thing that's just a setback for life in general. But yes, I think it's Jim Carrey frightens me in a lot of ways. But he did say one thing that always stuck with me, and he was like, no one else can write your narrative for you. It was like no one else gets to define your career. So that saved Jim Carrey for me.
That's a good one. I haven't laughed this much in a long time, and it's just been wonderful to be with the four of you. And I want to thank Amy for being the inspiration, for bringing us all together. and to thank Aparna, Cecily, and Naomi for being such good sports and coming on to a Princeton event and helping us celebrate Amy's book. So
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank
having me.
you.